Faith Forged in Fire, where we dive headfirst into the unique challenges and triumphs that comes with being a firefighter, all while exploring what it means to live out a biblical worldview. Join us as we find hope, perseverance, and faith in the midst of the heat and chaos. Welcome to the podcast.
Friday. Today's topic, episode 59, right?
I hope so. You're looking at it.
Yeah, if not,
is it
not
59?
blame him.
That's right.
No, that was a rookie firefighter.
Yeah, I went off last.
there for that one?
I started putting down the episodes so we know, then we can track them.
So I guess this one is called the local government's impasse on firefighting. That's what you said.
That's what
Impasse.
I said.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're not going to edit, so
Okay.
don't confuse that. Don't confuse
So,
that.
Chief, what does that
impasse.
mean? Do you understand? Is that word too big? Like, I know what that word means.
The impact of the local government.
No,
on
that's
the fire
very
department?
different. That's a very
I
different
thought it was
word.
impache. I thought it was
That could be.
Italian.
Impasse. And that's kind of a Band-Aid to control bleeding, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is going to be a subject that I'm going to be really careful with.
Yeah. Well, I think
I
we
thought
all
you were about to say really candid with, and I was so excited.
No.
Let's blow this podcast up.
Yep.
Yeah, so the way
This would still be here.
the way we can
Someone else might not be.
yeah, so please send your donations too.
Get a piece of tape and put it over that.
Yeah, that's yeah. Oh, yeah.
So how does the local government impact the fire department?
Boy.
So, can I say something?
No.
Okay.
Go good.
The reason I thought about this, well, we talked about it a couple episodes ago, and that's where the idea came from. We're like, hey, we need to have an episode on that. But for me, and I just want to say this for our non-firefighter listeners, when I joined the fire service, I had zero understanding. I was not a kid who grew up wanting to be in the fire service, nothing. So when I joined, I had zero, like I knew nothing. And the thing that surprised me the most was even in a small town, politics plays a role, and politics in the fight. Like it makes complete sense to me now because it is a civil, or it's a government controlled entity. It's a municipality. I understand that, but at the time, you think, well, we're just trying to save lives and save stuff, but it's not that simple.
Now, and on the other hand, I think there's people that take. Yes, there are politics because the government's involved. So, but on the other hand, when you say politics, I see me being really good friends with Jake to get his vote, and him being a really good friend with Steve,
so that I can get promoted or whatever. Yeah, no,
so
that's
we're
not what we're
talking
about.
about workplace politics.
We're
talking,
and we're not talking about. We're not here to debate either side of the aisle. That kind of politics, just small town politics or big town politics.
City,
yeah. Well, it's local oversight, right? Is what we're talking
That's
about.
it right there.
Yeah.
It's no different from New York City to
you can
something
have that
small.
kind of politics in a small town fire department.
Yes.
Because if I know some people that are against something, I know that there's 5 people on the board. And I know person number 1 and person number 3 are against it. I can start working on person number 2, person number 4, person number 5. And once I have 3 votes, I get my way.
Right.
And I'm pretty lucky to say that I've not had that problem. There's been a few times where I've kind of made sure that the right people had more information. And it wasn't necessarily to try to persuade a vote. It's just I wanted them to have the information so they could make a conscious decision.
Right. But what you're saying is interesting in that a lot of people, if you don't think about it, you think, well, the chief runs the fire department. Well, he does, sort of, but everybody's got a boss. We say that all the time on here.
I got 5 of them.
Chief, yeah. Any chief the department that I'm on, that's the full-time, second largest in the state, chief answers to the city, right? It doesn't matter
being daily operational oversight versus
but the
strategic oversight.
In that side of it, they have an operations chief.
Right.
He spends enough time doing what we would say the politics side of it, and he's doing other things too.
Sure.
But he's in front of commission. He's meeting with the manager. He's like, this is a regular thing.
Right.
So I started to say, people don't realize that, here Rich becomes chief of a small rural fire department for the joy of, hey, let's run this department. Let's train. Let's pour into people. Oh, by the way, now I've got to spend time looking out. Really, it's looking out for his people at that higher level. And it's not to say that at that higher level they're all bad or they're trying to destroy the department. That's not what we're saying. It's just he has a responsibility because he knows the day-to-day.
Oh, yeah. And he, as a leader, a good leader, goes to bat for his people.
Right.
And I'm lucky that for the most part, I feel the board has my back.
Right.
There are times I've walked out of meetings, but I also have to remember that not just me responsible for the taxpayers' money, so is the board.
Right.
So there are going to be times, absolutely, I'd like a $5 million station and a couple new engines and that. But realistically, you can't have that. So I know where there are some other stations that have boards that don't support them, and I wouldn't be a chief at those places.
Right.
It'd be horrible to have to fight for every single thing.
Yeah.
And for the most part, if I go to the board and I say, hey, this is what we really need, and I can prove it, or if you want to say, sell it to them.
Right.
Justify it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And have it make common sense, then 95% of the time they've had my back.
So let's talk about it this way, just again, so I'm thinking through the stuff that's common to us, not to everybody else. So literally, and when I say this, a lot of what I'm thinking of, I've seen it in a 200,000+ city down to a 2,000+ city, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's kind of the size of the governing party, but it's the same. You can't buy a new truck. It's not like the fire department just has this big old pot of money, and then so you can buy a new truck whenever you want.
Right. Yeah.
That has to be approved. In your case, and even in the case of my full-time department, there is even hiring people has to be approved, right? Basically any financial stuff has to be approved. In my department here, we just bought a new truck, and that wasn't just we're buying a new truck. No, it had to go through, and it was
Well, it's not unlike any large corporation in that sense that it has a chain of command to go through to get those things approved, whether that's a CFO of a company or a city manager.
So it's funny you guys are talking. I'm thinking of things. I'm going back. So I think for the viewer, for the listener, what they have to understand is, and I work for a large city department, so there's a lot of things I understand or I've experienced personally. But what people don't realize is a city government or a township government or whatever does not operate like a normal business. There's and I always said this for the large department I worked at, their budgets were July 1st. And I said, you can run that puppy into the ground, do whatever you want, because next July it's all good again. Because you get a whole new batch of money that comes in. You can't do that in a normal business. So the way that everything operates from the top down is completely different because it doesn't matter, because you're always going to get money to refund yourself.
Yeah. If Rich doesn't spend, if he's got $10,000 left over at the end of the year, that's not $10,000 for next year.
Right.
He loses it.
Yes, and that goes on a whole nother road, because that's where you get into government waste, right? And you talk about government waste. You get a budget every year, And if
Right, but I'm saying to your point of it's not like we're saving. It resets at the beginning of the year, right?
Like, yeah. So whenever your budget is so with that said, politics in the government aspect is different than like in a politics in a normal business, because in a normal business, too many politics can put you out of business.
Right.
By the way you run your business, by the way you treat everything. And in a government situation, it doesn't matter. You can run it as, and I hate to say it this way, as piss poor as you want to. And I've seen it. I've watched it. And I've seen it in my own eyes.
I appreciate his honesty.
Yeah, I mean, you can run it as poor as you want to, because you're going to be okay in the long run, especially if you're a large city, because generally, it's not like it hasn't happened. Generally, cities don't go bankrupt. Generally, they don't.
Right.
Usually, they have enough of a tax base that will fund that. So the way that a department, and we'll just speak specifically for fire, the way that they operate is much differently, because they're not there to make money. They're there to serve, and they're getting money that comes in to help serve. So what they're thinking is I got all this money. We can do anything we want to do here.
Right.
It's less about profits and loss. It's more about allocation.
That's one of the things that they talk about in my bigger city department, where they have different programs. They tell the program leaders when the new budget comes out, buy early, because what happens is the city doesn't care in a sense how the money's spent. They do because they watch, but they're given basically like a pot of money in a sense. Now, it's approved because the city's looked at that and said, yeah, I see all the reasons you want this, so yes. But if what happens is somewhere else they go over, the city's like, no, you've got your money, so they have to start cutting other places. And so they literally will say, like, okay, well, if you're running one of the, like, it's maybe the dive program or the tech rescue or whatever it is, if there's stuff you need, when that budget comes out and that money's in your pot, spend it. Because if you don't spend it and we get down to the end of the year and now we're trying to pay overtime and we're running out of budget, we got to take that from somewhere, and it's going to come, and that stuff. People who've never been in that don't understand how that works. Right. It's not just, we need a new truck, we get a new truck, or we need more people, we get more people. There's a lot involved that the chief has to kind of keep up with.
But you also have to kind of, for lack of better words, triage your needs.
Yes.
Sure.
Because like me, I get a budget, and it's about, I'll just say
that's getting pretty loud, by the way. Usually we can't hear the kids, but I feel like you're going to hear some kids on this podcast.
And I'll throw out that I'll say that my budget's like $250,000. Now, if I go and blow that on things we don't need, then towards the end of the year,
now you can't pay your people or fix a truck.
You can fiscally run a fire department into the ground. It doesn't matter if they reset my bank account in March.
Right.
If I keep spending it on stupid stuff,
and
now all of a sudden you've got an engine and you're taking it somewhere, and none of your hose passed,
right?
Or the guys don't have this awesome black gear that Steve sold us. Those kind of things. If you don't prioritize what you need,
right. The budget resets, but if you're not spending that wisely, you don't have. Yeah, you can run the department itself into the ground.
If you get behind the plane, it's hard to catch up before it crashes.
Well, and that's the other thing is then you think about if you haven't kept up with your gear and you haven't kept up with the hose and you haven't kept up, now you've got to do that. Now your budget can't handle it.
Well, the problem, too, is that you run into versus a large city is that the budgets are not proportionate. You're talking about a large city that's getting millions and millions of dollars to play with versus you having 250,000. It's just not. So you're in a tougher position because you have very little to work with, where large cities they get money and are like, they don't know what to do with it, because there's and it's serious.
And with a large city, though, if they get low in one area, they can start dipping into a different area. Like, you know what? The library doesn't really need a new roof.
Yeah.
But the fire department, the engine's on the fritz.
And you talk, that's another thing there, which is good, because in a large city department, everybody gets money, but there are certain departments that are favored over other departments, which is good. So places like out in Arizona, it's interesting because I see Michigan and Arizona a little bit differently. In Arizona, the fire departments are king of the cities. Like that's what people look at. Out here, it seems like police departments get more favor over the fire departments out here in Michigan. But
they have tender feelings.
We want to keep them happy.
Yeah, but that's a good point.
For your tender,
but. Whoa,
dad joke. Sorry.
Okay,
go on.
But like I was saying, is that it's tough for you because you don't have the available, but you only have so much to work with, and you really have more of a need than what you have to work with. Where in sometimes larger city departments don't have as big of a need and have way too much money to work with, and that's where the government waste comes in.
Now I'll give you an example that'll go right with that. Today I was approved $3,162 to try to make a training facility.
Yeah, that's just not going to.
How much do you think that your training facility cost in your training center at the big town that you work in?
It's millions that they're building right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even the one they have now.
Oh, you wouldn't even build their training house for $3,000.
Right.
No.
You wouldn't. You might build their tunnel system that they crawl through.
Now we'll go back to like yesterday's podcast. If somebody from your big city crashes in my township, do they not expect the same professional service?
Yes.
But I've got $3,100, and I'm telling you right now, we are going to be looking for people that will give us doors.
Yep.
Do you guys have some 2x4s from a house that you tore down? We'd be loving to take your used 2x4s. But that was my budget to build this, and we're going to try to get everything that we can, damaged interior doors, whatever we can to build this facility. I'm pumped. I was so excited that the board is going to go like, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm going like, yeah, finally we're going to have a fake indoor search and rescue and stuff.
Do you think it's because, and I know you're going to have to be careful answering this, is it because the money is not there for your local government, or is it because of maybe extra spending in other areas?
No, I think, of course I want more money. Any chief does. I want better training facility for my guys. I want a better training room for my guys. I want all that. But, we got to pay money into a library.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
That costs just about as much as the fire department does to run. I don't know how.
Right.
But it does.
Right.
That's part of the politics.
Yeah.
But we're also working on the infrastructure of, blacktopping some roads. And that's getting to the point where that's going to be ending here. So another 4 or 5 years, most of our roads in our 36 square miles will be blacktopped. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's because they don't like me. I don't think it's that at all.
Sure.
But the board also has to do triage, just like I have to do triage.
Right. Well, and I guess that's what I was getting at. Less about whether they like you or not, but more about are they and are they black tagging you during triage instead of saying maybe there's some viability here. You know what I mean? Maybe undercutting a little bit of like they can get by.
And in the middle of that, they're spending, is it $800,000 on
the truck,
on the engine?
$870.
Yeah.
Nice.
So again, you think about that within a small town. That's a chunk of money.
Oh,
plus I have another $30,000 worth of equipment to put on it. So, in honesty, my budget actually went up this year. So if they didn't like me, they should have left my budget the
That's
same.
a funny way of showing it.
And maybe paid a little, but paid that road off a little bit.
This is a great little spot here, by the way, for any of you who are listening to think this through. Especially if you're not a firefighter, you're a business owner, you're even just a person in the community, realize that when you drive by your volunteer department, and we've all seen them, and you're like, that looks like a dilapidated little old barn. I've seen those and went, wow, like it makes me thankful for the station that I have as a volunteer. It's nothing fancy.
Yeah.
But it looks a lot better than that. But as you drive by that, don't think, well, what a bunch of goofballs. No. Go, okay, maybe I need to stop and ask the chief, what do you need? Like if Rich had somebody come in a business owner come in and say, hey, like, I'd love to support you. I'm sure your budget isn't what you need it to be. I've got X amount of dollars, or I've got contacts, or whatever.
I can tell you what the chief would. I can tell you what the chief would tell him.
I'm excited.
Vote yes on that next millage.
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah,
but I'm thinking, like, right now, he's going to say,
oh, sure. But I mean,
he's going to say,
at
like,
the local level
if
of
we're
a
not,
project.
if it's not a voting thing,
Right.
I have $3,000 to start this thing.
Yeah.
The better I make it, the better we serve you in the community.
Right.
If you go out and start getting me money or getting me stuff, man, the better we make this, the better we train, the better we serve.
I'm glad you said that, because
You're going to cut me a check?
This is yeah, I'll cut you a check.
You liar.
$50.
It'll be for
$50.
It'll be for $1 or $2. But
He'll
yeah.
buy a
For a-
doorknob for
a
you.
coffee, coffee machine.
I'll buy you. I'll buy you a bag of coffee, and it's a write off for me. But no, making me lose my train of thought now.
Something I
that's
said.
something that's something that with my nonprofit, when we when we speak to donors, and especially, and this is more local community members that we're speaking to when it comes to this, we donate AEDs. And what is an AED? An AED, when you put it in a place, it's an insurance policy, right? Hopefully you'll never have to use it.
Right.
But boy, you want it there if you need it.
Right.
It's life and death.
Right.
You want it there. And the same goes for your local fire department. So when because it's easy for people to complain about, oh man, they're asking for another millage. They're asking for another millage. But understand that you get what you pay for.
Yes.
So if you have to ask yourself before going in, because I know people probably don't put enough thought into it. And I know that's a general statement, but it's hard to track that. Before choosing yes or no to vote on that, just ask yourself, how important is it for me to have this? At what level of care do I want? You know, what am I willing to pay now in case I need that? It's an insurance policy, so look at it just like any other one.
On the other hand, not only are we able to give the customer better service, we're also more equipped to keep our team safe.
Yeah,
Right.
Because if I can train these guys better, I mean, like, you two know how we do search and rescue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's our pole barn? 30 by 50.
Yeah.
You pull the engine, you pull the tender out.
Right.
You throw some garbage in there to pretend that it's a bed.
Yeah.
You knock the ladder over. You smoke it up really, really good, and you go like, "There you go, boys." It's not realistic. It's as realistic as we can.
Yeah.
So with another millage, if I got another millage, that's another $80,000. I wouldn't put it all into a training facility, but even if I could put 5,000 of that into a training facility, it gives us that much better for Jake or Jake's sister when she was on to be able to do that search and the rescue where your big department and the big department you were on, that was a no-brainer.
Oh, yeah.
You had a 3-story building with windows.
and they literally do. Yeah.
And hydrants and sprinklers and all
The
of
other
this
day, they
stuff.
were setting ladders, bailing out windows. They were, they were repelling out of the windows.
And when
all
you're
that
starting to
stuff.
talk about the safety of your guys, it's not just about having good training and being efficient at your job. It's their literal safety, because if they get hurt, guess what, taxpayers? You're paying for those medical bills. Right. It's just not, it may be coming out of a different area of the budget, but you're paying for it. So you want that.
That's the other side. We say, was it last podcast? I mentioned, as we do often, it doesn't matter if it's a city of full timers with a $40 million budget, or a city with 20 people and a $250,000 budget. When somebody gets in a wreck or somebody has an emergency, they expect the same amount of care.
Sure.
And the other side of that is the fire is the same everywhere. I am doing the same thing that they are.
Yep.
And I have the same dangers. The difference is they have the resources and the ability to train to save their life better.
And and I hope by talking about this topic and bringing up, what we've been bringing up, that people who are our listeners will kind of understand that when they go by a fire scene, when they go by a car accident or something like that, of like, maybe that little town, they're doing a pretty bang up job for the little that they have.
Yes.
Right. It's easy. It is easy to judge, and it's easy to, point fingers, but when you don't understand the behind the scenes, then
Right.
You see those memes all the time. Like I watched one the other day. The dude jumps out of the fire truck, grabs a hose, and takes off running, trips and falls, and everybody's laughing at him. You know, it's like that guy's probably doing the very best he can do.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know where it was from. You know,
Right.
it might have been one of the big cities, and he just was a
Yeah,
klutz.
it can happen everywhere.
But, you know, people don't realize, like you and I, when we went by some of the fire stations in the UP,
Right.
in the Upper Peninsula.
We
for
do the
people-
same thing, don't we? We
Well,
kind of
look at
judge that,
those
yeah.
and go like,
whoa.
wow, I don't,
wow,
you know,
way to
those
go,
guys.
way to go,
yeesh.
you judgers.
Well, yeah.
I find myself on the other side now going, I don't know.
I'm proud of them. I don't know if I can do it.
Exactly.
Because you know what's
Exactly.
in behind those doors probably, too.
Right.
If the station looks like that, most likely. I mean,
And
around here, where do all our the truck, even for us who have a $250 budget, $50,000 budget, where do our old trucks go? To those places.
UP.
Because that's all they can afford. So if we who don't have much
Right.
are pawning off our old stuff to them and it's an upgrade to them, yeah, I'm proud of them. They're showing up and they have very little help. Look how far apart those stations are to
Right.
get mutual aid, all
And
those
they are
things.
probably true volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think what the people need to realize too, and let's speak in the fire department sense, and kind of along your thing about the guy that tripped on the hose and stuff like that. Understand, big city department, full-time department, budgets in the sense that you go to every fire station, there's a gym in the fire station.
Yep.
They're exercising, doing all this stuff. Guys aren't tripping because these guys are spending their whole day training because they have every resource in the book to
Right.
better their bodies to be able to do the job. Where the volunteer
Right.
department's in a paid on call. Guys coming from his job where he doesn't have a gym to work out
Right.
and do what he wants to do
Well,
all day.
and here's
it's
the
a
thing.
completely different there, and that's
And those kinds of things can happen to anybody, right? I mean, I remember being in a
but
I mean,
the point I'm trying to make though is what people don't understand about the paid on call and the volunteer and the disparity of the budgets and all that stuff
yeah.
is these guys here on the paid. They have every resource because their budgets are what they are. That's their job. They can get the best of everything.
Right.
That's why I get frustrated sometimes when I see big departments getting grants. You don't need a grant. Give it to the small departments that need the grant. Why large cities get grants is beside me because they don't. It's just wasted money. They don't need it. The small departments, UP, they need the grants because they can't afford anything.
And they can't afford a grant writer, and I guarantee that the department that he's on probably
Exactly.
has a grant
That's
writer.
what it is. It's what it is. But that's what I'm saying. So
well, we don't have a full-time one. That's one of the things they do is they use people. And I will say this, and I think I want to defend that in a sense, Steve, because there's probably some people listening from that department. And really, when you look at Phoenix compared to my department, that's two completely different departments, right? In our world, if you think about a department, for us as paid on call, that's a big city department. But there's about 200. There's just over 200 employees. That's still a small department, right?
Sure.
But the guy who won Firefighter of the Year this year, he won it because of his grant writing abilities, and he's gotten the department millions of dollars in grants and grants that the city would not have given them. So, I get your point, but like for me, when I look at that and go, we kind of look at that as a big city. It's not really. It's not.
No, but my
to the point though. I mean, and if you look at the behind the scenes, every department's going to try to go for those grants,
right?
To different success levels, right? But why do they get those grants from the state? Because the state's got to give it away. Because if they don't, then they lose the federal funding of where that money's coming from.
But my whole point though was that there were departments that don't need the act. They have enough. They have enough to be able to do daily operations. What I'm saying is when I was doing the sales job, I would go to a lot of departments. They're like, I write grants, I can't get anything. And I'm going, they have no money. These are the people that need the money.
Oh, yeah.
That's my point. Not to say that bigger cities don't. They just don't need it like the smaller cities do.
No, they do.
Because like I said, with your shack of a station like you're talking about, or the UP, well, no, you were talking about like your station being different than
sounded like
other
you're calling your
stations.
station.
No, but I'm saying is that it's like they need a new station.
Right.
This bigger city that they don't, they're doing just fine, and so it's
and to Rich's defense, this gives you a little idea what he's working with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and
we've got the uppers, what they call the the upstairs of the station, which was once the township hall, and when they built their own brand new township hall, they gave it to Rich. So now that's where training is. And by the way, pay attention to small town politics. And I'm saying this carefully. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I do know this. I know that at one point there was conversation about building, when they built the township hall, building a station.
Oh, yeah.
When the township hall was built, then the question was asked, why didn't they build a station? They didn't build a station because voters didn't care enough to go out and vote and pass that and get that through.
Right.
So, by the way, pay attention. Because this is a politics thing, pay attention to how you vote in your small town, and pay attention if you care about things like that. So anyway,
to that point, real quick, I think it is even more important to be involved in your local politics.
It impacts you far greater.
And voting, that is what directly impacts your day to day. I know it's more, most popular to vote for president and governor and all that, but it's truly your local things that
if your local fire department has enough money to train and serve you, that's going to impact you someday. Like if they can come save your life or your house, that impacts you.
It could. It's an insurance policy.
So anyway, they get a call, and it depends. You pull up, you park, and it depends on. There's a couple of trucks in the basement, right? You run downstairs, but otherwise they got to run across the parking lot through the slippery snow. For a while, there was not even a sidewalk. You want to talk about slipping and falling? There's a little hill, and if it's icy, I can't tell you how many times I've slipped and fallen.
Everybody
trying to get to the truck.
Yeah.
Yep. So then you get all the way out there. Then you got to get it's again carefully. You do what you do with what you get. If you look at it in terms of being quick and it's ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when I'm down in my other one, I get out of bed and I walk about 10 steps and get in the engine, and that's how quick everybody is. So now we're already responding from our homes. Then we've got to, in the winter, take your life in your hands just to get to another barn that's got a truck. It's just, but that's regular. I'm not putting anybody down. That's just regular. That's what, and people need to understand.
No, that's probably most of those stations.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
But Steve was talking, and I 100% agree with him when it comes to the grants. My SCBAs are going to time out here pretty soon because they are only supposedly good for so many years. They're going to be, I'm guessing, $6,000 for a pack with a bottle.
More than that.
And I'm going to need 20 of them plus spare bottles. Right. Do that math, you rocket scientist.
There's your whole budget.
My whole budget's gone.
Whole budget's gone.
Now, your big city can more afford that than I can.
Right.
So I agree when it comes to budgets, and I get it that if it wasn't for budgets, your station would be hurting. So would FDNY.
Right.
But like Steve says, if you could get that, let's say FDNY gets a $150,000 grant for something, could you imagine what 3 stations in some of these counties would do if you walked in there and gave them $50,000?
Yeah. Right. Right. $150,000 on a $40 million budget is a lot different than $150,000 on a $200,000 budget.
Because that budget, that grant that I got, I ended up buying a compressor from Steve, SCBA compressor. Man, that was the best thing ever.
Right.
It's a great
compressor
too, isn't it?
It changed your whole life as your whole department. It changed the whole.
It was only $40,000.
Right.
But what the public needs to understand though when it comes to big city, small city is that, a big city runs, let's say 10,000 calls a year, say hypothetically. Right. And your department runs, 500 calls a year. Let's say hypothetically.
Close to
600 calls. It doesn't matter. All those 600 calls are just as important as the 10,000 calls. And just because you run 10,000 calls doesn't mean that you deserve so much more. Because here's the deal. Those 600 calls, every person you run on deserves the same amount of care, just like the big city. Every member of your department deserves the same safety as the bigger department.
More math that goes into that than just 10,600. You look at population density.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying is we're talking about the grants.
No, but I'm making your point with you is that the population density matters in that too because of those 600 calls, there might be only 2,000 people in that 36 square miles or so compared to 10,000 calls and, but you're focused on a larger city. So it equals out is what I'm saying is that it's probably more equal than you think So to your point, yes, they are equally as important.
Yeah, you're just as important. I always say that about, the calls. I would talk to big, small department. I say, listen, man, when that tone goes up, it doesn't matter what the name on the back says.
Right.
It's still the same call, whether you're in a big city or small. And everybody that runs those calls are important. So it doesn't need to be, I know we're getting
we're going to have to land this plane, but I have a question for you, Rich, because I feel like this probably is budget-wise maybe tricky for you, because now watching, like, say, my full-time department, the thing that gets them budget-wise every year is the overtime, right? Some people are sick, they're on vacation, and you just can't budget for that overtime.
Sure.
But to me, your expenses, how do you budget so for payroll? Because being paid on call, you have 600. So you okay, if I have 600 calls, but it's your 600 calls, if 2 people show up for all those calls, is very different than if all 20 show up for all those calls.
Exactly.
And then what happens when all of a sudden there's 1,200 calls, or you have some calls that are, now you got a big storm where you're paying 10, 12 hours, you're paying people. Like, there's no way.
You just, like this year, I got a $10,000 increase in payroll. And that was because I'm hoping to hire some more people. And the people that I have are going through classes that are going to allow them, once they graduate, to go to more calls. But yeah, with you, if it's during the day and it's just John and I, that's a piece of cake.
Right.
But if it's an afternoon call and I get 10 people that show up, like you're saying, a storm comes through, and I got 20 people, and we're on shift for 6 hours.
Right. It cuts into your budget real quick.
Right.
Yeah. So, and just another one of those things that people, I think this turned into more of things people don't think about from the outside rather than just the politics side of it. But hopefully this is really interesting for people and helpful for people to understand the side that now is just common workings for me, right? It's the it's the regular conversations about, you go to chief and say, boy, I'd like to have this. And it's not unusual to hear, well, I get that. Let's see what the board says, whatever it might be. But you just kind of learn it. Chief is not telling me no just because he doesn't care.
Right.
And stop by the station.
Yeah.
If you live in a rural place and you go by your fire barn and go like, man, that looks ugh. Someday when they're having training, if they have training, if they can afford training, swing by and see what's going on.
Right.
Take a look at that place and go like, are these guys getting the training that they need? Not just for my benefit, as a 911 caller, but are they getting trainings to keep them safe? And if you've got a question in your mind about that, it'd be a really good time to figure out where the township hall is.
Yeah.
And sit down and start talking on their behalf.
And here's another thought that I had too. When you see those brand new fire trucks, be thankful. Realize that, and people go, that's my tax money. Yeah. Be thankful that's your tax money. Go into good equipment, and also realize, how old's your engine right now that you're getting rid of?
04.
Yeah. So, we figure at least 15 years keeping a truck.
Yeah,
By the time
we're on a 17-year rotation.
by the time this podcast comes out, Lord willing, we'll have a brand new tender, whatever you want to call it, is sitting in our station. And I hope the community's excited about that, thankful for that, but realize when I see that and I get excited about that, I know that thing's probably going to be in my life the rest of my fire career.
Yeah,
exactly. That's
just
we're
like
not turning those things over.
Just like the engine we just got or are about to get, it's state of the art. We might be the one of 5 people in Michigan that will have this, and it was a lot of money. But it also gives us the ability to get in a house so much faster,
right,
and provide the services that we need so much faster.
But your engine that you have now, it was there when I came into the fire service.
Yep.
It's still there. It's still it's not like we're just rolling over new fire trucks all the time either.
You can't afford to.
And people will vote differently when they're affected personally.
Yes.
The moment that they run
definitely.
a call on you and your family,
right,
now you're thinking a lot different about your local fire department and what their needs are.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
100%.
saying before you call 911 and you need Billy and his kids on the fire department, stop by and see what they've got.
Yeah.
See what you can do to go to bat for them. You don't go like, man, we don't even have SCBAs, and we've been hitting the board up for this, and see what you can do to help them out.
And I hate to say it, and this is so sad because there's so much truth to this when it comes to, like you're saying, the political areas. That the moment change happens is when the disaster happens. And that's the sad part about it, is that sometimes it takes a disaster and people go, why are our fire guys don't have what they need? And then all of a sudden it becomes a glaring need, a glaring black,
and sometimes the answer to that is because the community didn't care enough to vote the right way.
Well, again, like I said, it's an insurance policy. And you know what else is an insurance policy? Red Flannel Coffee. It's your insurance policy against a bad morning.
Yes, we are parking this plane.
Time to land this
Nope, because I got
plane.
one more thing.
Oh, my goodness.
Look, you guys talk about community involvement and everything, but my kids will ask me, unfortunately, when they were in history class, they'd ask me things that I lived through. But one of my favorite
like
times,
the Hindenburg?
Yeah, just because I sold my ticket at the last minute. One of my favorite times to be an American was 9/12 and 9/13.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody, unless you lived it, understood
why.
You could go to Meijer, you could go to Walmart, you could go to Ace Hardware. You couldn't buy an American flag.
Yep.
And when I drove that 45 minutes
and
to
you
work,
didn't get anybody that didn't say hi, how you do, like
Right.
it was
everybody
just
had
different.
an American flag. Now, I'll challenge whoever's listening. When you leave this morning, count how many American flags you see between when you leave the house and when you get to work, and put that in one of your replies. Used to be 75 or 80 for me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Now Walmart doesn't, I get why Walmart doesn't, because they're not American. But, so those things. and
Taking shots fired.
Hey, you know who does support American? Red Flannel Coffee Company. Go to redflannelcoffeeco.com. Don't forget to subscribe and save. Get that.
That was great. That was great,
Get that
Jay.
coffee sent to you every month, however much you want. And since they're hysterical right now, don't forget to go to, find us wherever you listen to
Figure
podcasts.
it out.
FFIF podcast at gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us. That's a wrap. We'll see you next week. I'm done.